It's day 16 of the Karen Reed trial. I'm going to give you my daily recap. I've already filmed this once, but TikTok messed it up, so I'm going to do it again. So today we have Jen McCabe still on the stand. She's in the middle of her cross-examination by Alan Jackson, and thankfully she finishes today because I can't handle more of this. Jen is immediately questioned about going over to Trooper Proctor's home. She says that he was not there when she went over to his house, but she was actually going to meet his wife, Elizabeth. This was in September of 2023. Alan Jackson wanted to know, why are you going over there? And she said basically, Trooper Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, and her have been receiving vicious harassment, so she was going over to meet up with her about that. We also get some more questioning about the 12 statements that Jen McCabe gave. This was in my recap from day 15, but basically she had called a police officer to come back to give another statement only a few hours after they were already there, like one of the first days. And it was more of the same, like reiterating the could I have hit him. And so Alan Jackson really wants to hit the nail on the head with this and just let everybody know, you know, immediately after this happened, this is what you said, and your memory was the freshest then. We begin talking about some phone calls that she's had with Trooper Proctor. Apparently she did not know him before this incident happened at the end of January, but she does have quite a bit of call record with him on her phone. The phone logs indicate that there were a ton of back and forth phone calls between them, and they actually had a 21-minute phone call on January 30th at 9:52 a.m. where he called her, and she doesn't recall if they had any more calls in 2022, but Alan Jackson has the receipts, and he goes through and lists off all the phone calls that they had. He just wants to make this like obvious for the record, but it was like painful to listen to. We finally get into the Celebrate download from Jen McCabe's phone. On the witness list, there is the expert from Celebrate. So this is not going to go away. We're going to hear about this, but her testimony today was she came home from the party and was home up on her phone and Googling things. And around 2:23, she Googled something about Ozone basketball. Apparently that was a basketball league that her daughter was going to join. She says, yeah, at that hour, basketball was what was on my mind. I had sent some group texts and I went into Safari on my phone and I Googled this. Alan Jackson then asked, was there anything else on your mind? She knows that this power punch is coming. Like she's just ready for it. Doesn't just come out and ask, did you Google this? He sets it up and asks, was there anything else on your mind? And she goes, I don't believe so. And he says, Jen, if you wanted to know how long it would take for somebody to die in the cold from extreme temperatures, what would you Google? Down on saying, I only Googled what the defendant asked me to Google in the early morning hours the next day. You don't have to guess at what you would do because you actually Google searched it and you wrote this, and he spells it. This is a little bit difficult to see, but the first Google search happened at 2:27 a.m., which is so believable for me, but this was actually deleted by Jen McCabe. She says, oh, I didn't even know you could delete a Google search. I leave my tabs open, blah, blah, blah. This was deleted according to the Celebrate extraction. We will hear from the Celebrate expert that will be on the stand. The Commonwealth is going to call them at some point. And it was spelled incorrectly. It's HOS, how long to die in the cold. She's already admitted that she is awake at 2:27, she is on her phone, and that she is using Google to Google other things. So this instance, if I was a juror, is extremely believable to me. We have two other Google searches. It's spelled a little bit different. It's kind of hard to see different type of typos here, but essentially at 6:23 and 6:24, she Googles it again, and I feel like this was kind of like to cover her ass Googles, and this is when she claims that the defendant, Karen Reed, asked her to Google it because John was being taken away in the ambulance. The final tidbit from the Jen McCabe testimony is that she heard something that Kerry Roberts said in her interview with state police that was done at her home that horrified her. And we don't really get to what this is, but on cross-examination or redirect, by Mr. Lally, we learn what had horrified her. She says with a big grin, was John really loved Amy, and in my eyes, Karen was just a babysitter with benefits. So it felt like really icky mean girl vibes. I don't know how the jury took that. Introducing Kerry Roberts. She's been talked about quite a bit because she was with Jen McCabe when they discovered John's body. We finally meet Kerry Roberts. She was with Jen and Karen Reed when they discovered John O'Keefe's body. She's a really good friend to John O'Keefe. In all of her backstory, it sounds like they grew up together in Braintree. They reconnected when they both realized they live in Canton. And she was actually really good friends with Kristen, I think is the name, John's sister, who is the mother to Kaylee and Patrick, his niece and nephew that he adopted. So it's a little bit confusing, but she knows Kristen really well. And then when John took over and adopted the kids, she stayed connected with them because Patrick and her son are close in age, so she would like carpool them to sports and stuff. So on the morning of January 29th, she gets a call from Karen Reed at 5 a.m. It was 5 a.m. on the dot, she says. Karen was really loud and frantic on the phone, and she said, "John's dead, Kerry, Kerry, Kerry," and then she hangs up. It actually wakes up her husband because Karen was so loud, and then she calls back again and she says, "I'm afraid John might be dead. He might have been hit by a plow. I wasn't supposed to stay in Canton last night, and he would have never left Kaylee alone. He didn't come home last night." Kerry Roberts has very specific memories, but Jen McCabe hinted the whole time in her testimony that Kerry Roberts is a talker, and I feel like she was like planting that with the jury to kind of like write Kerry off, but I think she did give some good testimony. The plan was that Karen was going to come over to Kerry Roberts' house and then they were going to go out looking for John, and she was just sitting and waiting for Karen, and she ended up calling the police non-emergency line to see if anybody was hit by a plow. They said no, and she called Good Samaritan Hospital and there were no car accidents. While Kerry is waiting for Karen, she learns that Karen actually went to Jen McCabe's house and was waking her up. So then Kerry drives over to Jen's. When she was talking and getting original statements, Karen told her that she didn't really search around John O'Keefe's house, so that's why they all go back to the O'Keefe's house and search in there. I should also mention that Kerry had only met Jen McCabe once prior to all of this happening, and they didn't have each other's phone numbers. Kerry Roberts says that Karen brings up the broken tail light. Kerry looked at it, she saw that there was a small piece missing. So Karen had said that the last time she saw John was at the Waterfall Bar, and Jen brings up, "No, you came to 34 Fairview. I saw the car there." So that's why the plan became to go and look for John at 34 Fairview. They start to show some of the police dash cam video, and Kerry Roberts is very emotional and crying on the stand, and it looks extremely genuine. She testified that Karen was hysterical. She was in the back seat of the car. She wouldn't put on her seatbelt, all things that Jen McCabe also said. And as they were driving up to 34 Fairview, they had kind of passed the flagpole in front of the house. And that's when Karen Reed said that she saw something and was kicking the car and screaming and wanted to get out of the car. Karen ran over to a snow pile, and that's when Kerry learned that that was John. He was completely covered in snow. She said that she's CPR certified, so she started to do CPR. She could tell that his right eye was swollen like a golf ball. He had a gash on his head, and she had blankets in the car, so she wrapped them around him, and that's when she learned that he had a gash on the back of his head as well. She also observed that there were scratches on his arm, and he was so deep under the snow. Under his back was his cell phone, and then it was grass under him. She said that she went and picked up John O'Keefe's parents in Braintree. They didn't have all-wheel drive, so she brought them to the hospital, and then she was there and kind of facilitated a conversation with John O'Keefe's dad and Karen Reed's dad. The two of them wanted to speak, so she facilitated that. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish everything in the next minute, so go to part 2.